Hello, my friends. Welcome back to StoryPath English. Today, I want to tell you about a miracle. Imagine a small island nation. It has no modern machines, no steam engines, and no contact with the outside world. For 250 years, it has been frozen in time. Its warriors fight with swords. Its people live in wooden houses. But then, in just 50 years, the blink of an eye in history, this small island becomes one of the most powerful nations on Earth. It builds massive steel battleships. It creates giant factories. It defeats an empire 10 times its size. How did Japan do it? How did they change so fast? This is the incredible story of the Meiji Restoration, and it is a lesson in how courage and the hunger for knowledge can change the world. Stay with me, and if you enjoy learning English through these epic stories of history, please subscribe to StoryPath English. It was a quiet summer morning in 1853. In a small fishing village called Uraga, people looked out at the ocean and saw something terrifying. 4 giant ships were moving toward the shore. But these were not like any ships the Japanese had ever seen. They were made of dark wood and iron. They were breathing black smoke into the sky. They moved without sails, powered by giant steam engines. The people were frozen with fear. They called them the Black Ships. On these ships was an American commodore named Matthew Perry. He had a message for the leaders of Japan. Open your country to trade, or we will open it for you with our cannons. At that time, Japan was a closed world. For centuries, the shogun, the military ruler, had banned almost all foreigners. Japan was a land of samurai, tradition, and silence. But when those American cannons fired a salute, the sound echoed across the entire country. The Japanese realized a painful truth. While they were polishing their swords, the rest of the world had invented the steam engine, the telegraph, and the modern gun. Japan faced a choice. They could fight and be conquered, like many other nations in Asia at that time, or they could change everything they knew to survive. They chose to change. In 1868, a group of young, visionary leaders took power. They ended the rule of the shogun and put a 15-year-old boy on the throne. He was the Emperor Meiji. This was the beginning of a period called the Meiji Restoration, a 50-year race against time. The first thing they did was something brave and unexpected. They sent their best and brightest students across the ocean. These young men went to London, Berlin, Paris, and New York. Their mission was simple: learn everything. They studied how the British built their navy. They studied how the Germans organized their army. They studied how the Americans built factories and how the French wrote their laws. They didn't just want to copy the West, they wanted to master it. Back in Japan, the change was violent and fast. The government told the samurai, the legendary warrior class, that they were no longer needed. They were forbidden from carrying swords in public. Their special status was gone. It was a heartbreaking moment for many, but the leaders knew that a modern nation could not rely on swords. They needed a modern army with modern rifles. Japan became a giant construction site. Thousands of miles of railroad tracks were laid across the mountains. Telegraph lines connected the cities. For the first time, people from different villages could talk to each other in seconds. The sound of the country changed. The quiet songs of the countryside were replaced by the roar of silk factories and the hammer of shipyards. Children who used to study only ancient poems were now sitting in modern classrooms, learning mathematics, science, and English. The Japanese people worked with an energy the world had never seen. They changed their clothes, they cut their hair. They even changed their diet, believing that eating beef would make them as strong as the Europeans. But many in the West laughed at Japan. They saw Japan as a small student trying to play a big man's game. They did not believe a backward Asian nation could ever compete with the great powers of Europe. That laughter stopped in 1904. Japan went to war with Russia. Russia was a giant empire with a massive navy and millions of soldiers. No Asian nation had ever defeated a European power in a modern war. Everyone expected Russia to win easily. But the black ships that had once terrified Japan were now Japanese ships. Japan had built a navy that was fast, modern, and disciplined. In the freezing waters of the Tsushima Strait, the Japanese fleet met the Russian navy. In less than 24 hours, the Japanese destroyed the Russian fleet. The world was in total shock. It was as if a small child had suddenly stood up and knocked down a giant. In just 50 years, Japan had moved from the age of the sword to the age of the battleship. They were no longer a student. They were a world power. This transformation came with a high price. Life for the workers in the factories was very hard. The old traditions were disappearing. But Japan had achieved something that seemed impossible. They had modernized without losing their soul. They kept their emperor, their language, and their pride, but they embraced the future. The story of Japan's rise is a story of what happens when a nation decides to stop looking backward and starts looking forward. It shows that power doesn't just come from gold or land, it comes from the ability to learn and the courage to change. From the silent temples of the 1850s to the roaring cities of the 1900s, Japan walked a road that usually takes centuries. They walked it in 50 years. They walked it with a clear mind and a strong heart, and in doing so, they changed the map of the world forever. Thank you for listening to this story on StoryPath English. I hope this story of rapid change and determination helps you in your own journey of learning English. Tell me in the comments, what is something in your life that you changed very quickly? And what country's history do you want to hear about next? I love reading your comments from every corner of the globe. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to StoryPath English. Your support helps me keep telling these stories for you. See you in the next story, my friends. Keep learning and keep moving forward.